My name's Walter McElrath. I'm a customer success manager with Microsoft, and I'm here to go ahead and start talking to everyone about webinars within Microsoft Teams meetings. Now, a couple things to go ahead and consider as we're talking about webinars within Microsoft Teams, right? We always have this issue where maybe somebody wants to have a slightly more structured Teams meeting, and it's meant for training, HR purposes, or just because, whatever that reason might be. Luckily, webinars is going to give us a fantastic and easy outlet to go ahead and do just that. Now, instead of just giving you a plain meeting template to go ahead and move forward with, it'll even give you a very easy to use and professional form factor, specifically with its custom registration. We're going to actually look into what all that looks like here soon, but it's just making the entire process very seamless in the sense that anyone in the organization could take advantage of this feature and functionality. And quite simply, there's nothing else more than you have to pay for. So how great is that? Now, when it comes down to webinars within Teams meetings, the whole idea is to keep your attendants engaged, or your attendees, excuse me, engaged within the session. And this is really making things significantly easier because it is going to go ahead and actually define the basics between an actual presenter and a moderator or a attendee. And that's actually the format that we have going on right now. And the reason why I'm really highlighting that first is because as we hop into Teams meetings, we do have this different concept in the sense of different roles that are going to be played out. And Teams webinars is going to make that significantly easier for you and give you a way that you don't necessarily have to think about it is the best way to go ahead and put it. It's also going to give you some basic information post creation for the event itself that you can go back to later on down the road. No matter what size of group that you're trying to go and reach out to, Teams webinars is actually going to make it as easy as possible to scale that event out. Now, I do want to make the comment that actually our first meeting Monday session that we had a couple weeks ago, we specifically talked about having an event or hosting an event, excuse me, for a large scale of people or amount of people. Now, just as a quick reminder, you can actually have up to 20,000 people within one of these events. Now, specifically, up to 1,000 are going to be able to interact with you, and that's going to be with any polls that might come up, like the one that we had just a short bit ago, any Q&A or chat functionality, or even simply coming off of mute. So that's something to go ahead and keep in mind. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, please feel free to go ahead and reference that older Meeting Monday on large events that we had, where we are going to be posting a whole bunch of these recordings for everyone to go back to later on down the road. So again, something else to go ahead and consider. When it comes down to the webinars, one key aspect that they're going to offer to you is the fact that you can actually create a registration form. Now, that's actually the key thing here because that's what's going to differentiate between a regular Teams meeting, because actually they're the same thing. It's simply that webinars are going to institute a specific set of roles for everyone that's joining the event. And we're going to actually go through this. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through step by step, but it's going to give you a quick and easy registration form to actually work with. And you can customize this and add stuff in, or even go back and edit anything and change the time frame for any of this registration that you might need to go ahead and set up. When it comes to the actual end portion of the event itself, it'll even give you some basic analytical information that you can look into after the fact, such as who registered for the event and actually attended afterwards. When did they join? So you get that typical timestamp information of when somebody joined, when did they leave, even too, what was the average time that everyone actually joined this event as well. So we're going to take a peek into each one of these. And actually, right on cue, I'm going to back out of this presentation and we're going to see what all that looks like. Now, I'm already within Microsoft Teams, and for those of you following along with us, we're going to go into the calendar section, and we can find that in the left-hand panel within the Teams app. And specifically, I'm using the desktop application for this, but it doesn't matter if you're in the web app or whatever the case may be. If we actually want to create a brand new webinar, very easy to do. Look in the top right portion of the screen where we see new meeting, but there's actually a little drop down arrow. Once I click on that, I'll find the option to create a brand new webinar. Open that up, I'm going to get a very similar looking screen. If you've ever created a Teams meeting before in the past, it'll have a lot of the same information, albeit slightly different. Now let's quickly fill this out just to get an idea for what it's like to actually create one of these events. So I'm going to add this a title, or give this a title. Let's just say Introduction to Webinars. I'm going to add in any required presenters. Now, specifically presenters, not attendees. Now, by default, since I'm the one actually making this a webinar, I don't have to add it myself. I'm automatically a presenter. But I'm going to add in my colleague, Megan Bowen. If I want to add in any optional presenters, I can do just that. So similar kind of concept you've ever made a regular Teams meeting before. We'll have a default start and end times for the actual event itself. Now, this is where things get a little bit different if you've ever made a Teams meeting. This is actually an invite that you're going to create and send out to the presenters, not to the attendees. So a great best practice here is to actually determine what time do you want your event to be and have your presenters show up 10, 15 minutes early. So let's say I'm going to have an event at 2:30 this afternoon. I'm going to have my time or all my presenters in for 2:15. I'm just going to customize my end time and have that end at 3 o'clock. So I'll have some type of event going from 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I can add in whatever agenda I want because this is all intended to be only for the presenters themselves. So you can add in timeline for who's going to start speaking, any specific notes that you might want to have on hand. You can put all this here. It's only for the presenters. Now, we're not going to send this out yet, just like what we would typically do. What we're going to look for is the ability to actually create a registration form. And this is when things actually start to get pretty fun. Towards the top of the screen, want your attendees to register for this webinar. We're going to click on the option that says View Registration Form. Now, I know I'm going pretty quick, so by all means, if you do have some questions, please let us know in the chat, or we can always talk about it a little bit more here towards the end. Now, I'm making my registration screen a little bit bigger, but this is what you'll see from a base level. It's going to ask you to give an event title. Now, this can be different from what you added in for all the presenters because this is going to be a separate invite that you send out. So for here, I'm going to give it a title called Learn How to Conduct an Event. Once again, I can sign my time frame. Now, I did mention I was going to have this going from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. Now, I'm going to have that here today. I'll add in some type of description for my event. I'm just going to say here, you will learn how to host a webinar. I can add in any information I might have about my speakers. So let's say, for example, I myself am going to be presenting during this event. I can add in a small bio. I'm just going to do a little copy paste there for the sake of time. And same thing, I can actually add in a bio for somebody else that's going to be hosting the event with me. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have my colleague Megan Bowen jumping in to actually help out with this. Once again, do a little copy paste to plop that in there. If we look on the right-hand portion of the screen, I can see the other half of my registration form. And we'll have the basics of first, last, names, and what's your actual email address. But I can add in more fields, so I can actually customize this. So I'm going to add in, let's say, the ability to have a person's job title entered in here. So maybe you're looking for some statistical information, but great basic pre-formatted option to put in. I can choose to have this be a required option, or I can even add in custom fields. So let's say, for example, I want multiple choice, maybe asking, how did you hear about this event? Help if I can spell that right. You hear about this event. And you can add in multiple options or different choices that you might need. And then also too, I can have a non-multiple choice based option or multiple choice depending on what it might be. So let's do this last question. What would you like to learn? From here, I can go ahead and click on Save. And I can actually start sending this out here momentarily, but not quite yet. Let's minimize that. Now I'm ready to actually send out this event. Now, when I click on send, the webinar is created. And you might remember I had that window still open. I'm just going to pull it back up. I'll see the ability to actually copy the registration link. And from here, I can send it out in any way, shape, or form I see fit. Now, maybe I might be doing a LinkedIn campaign, something that's a little bit more public. I can actually put that into a LinkedIn post for everyone to possibly go ahead and register to. Or I can add it to maybe an all company comms where I do a mass email saying, hey, we're hosting this event. We want you to register and join it with us here today. Please feel free to register if you'd like to join. Great way to get things started. Now I'm going to close out of this window right here. And let's actually take a quick look to see what it looks like from the possible attendees perspective to register for one of these events. So I'm going to pull up a web browser. I did have another user already ready to go, and let me move this on over to actually start registering. I'm going to paste that link right into my web browser. Just hit enter. I got my nice, easy RSVP form all ready to go, where I can enter in all the applicable information. Now, this is for my colleague, Irvin. So I'm just going to briefly fill out his information. And as I'm filling this out, I just wanted to see, did we have any questions, Nick, that came through within the chat that we need to go ahead and address so far?
Not yet. I've dropped a couple of comments in. So folks, if you have a question, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll answer them there or relay them to Walt if it's something we want to talk about.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. So I went ahead and briefly filled out my form right here. Now, once I go ahead and click on register, and that's it. I've registered for the actual event. The person is going to get an email sent to them. And sometimes it does take 2 to 3 minutes to actually land into that person's email box. But once they do, they're going to get an email that looks just like what you see here on my screen. Now, this one in particular, I actually ended up updating. So I can update events after a time. Or after I actually create the event. So maybe I got the time wrong. I can do all that later on without any issue. And everyone that registered gets automatically notified. But now from here, within this web browser, they do automatically get sent the actual invite in the email, or they can choose to add it to their calendar. And once they do, they can add it to their Outlook calendar, or they can join the actual event itself from Microsoft Teams, or they can actually join the event through the web browser itself. So great way to go ahead and get things started. Now, in order to actually join the event, they'll simply join it just like they did any other Teams meeting. So the exact same way that people joined this session here today, that's what their experience is going to be. When they join the event, they'll have the ability to possibly chat, and depending on whether or not the people that created the event want them to be able to come off mute or whatever the case may be, they'll see those options there. And that's my next point that I want to start looking into. So for now, I'm going to actually open up this calendar event that I just created for this webinar. And we're going to start talking about another concept. And this is the idea behind the actual personas within a Teams meeting. And not to take too much from the other events that we've had, because like I said, I want everyone here to review that large event session that we had a few weeks back, but understanding that you have the presenters and then you have attendees. If you wanted to adjust any meeting options to change any of these personas that are available to you before the session gets started, I can go into meeting options within the actual details of the event itself, and it's going to open up a brand new web page for me. I can adjust everything from here. Everything that we see on our screen is actually going to be the default settings. And this is one of the great things about webinars in comparison to a regular Teams meeting if you're trying to have everything structured. By default, everyone can go ahead and bypass the lobby within your organization, or depending on whatever settings have been adjusted by your Teams admin. Or I can customize it so that way, maybe I'm the only person that can bypass the lobby. I don't want anybody else joining until I say they're able to, or I'm ready to allow people in. I can restrict so that way only certain people are going to be able to present during this session as well. So maybe I only want one or two different people to do just that. I can restrict it too. Or I can assign so that way anybody can present, which does kind of pull back the idea or the concept behind what a webinar really is, because this will allow everyone to actually share out their screen. Whereas if you pick and choose, hey, only certain people are able to share their screen. Taking this event that we're in right now as an example, only myself, Nick, and Don are able to actually show off their screen, or at this case in time as well, come on camera, because we've restricted here within all these different meeting options. Now, if you or another, we can also restrict people coming off.
Someone's challenging the assumption.
So I think that's a great point to go ahead and showcase. Is, let's say, for example, you have adjusted all your meeting settings and you're in the meeting itself. So I'm going to open it up. You can actually adjust all of your meeting options while the call is live. And let's just open this up, make it a little bit bigger. So that way, in case you do want to allow people to come off mute, whereas you may have restricted it earlier, you can click on the ellipsis towards the top right portion of that window, find the option that says meeting options. And from here, I can adjust all those same settings that we saw earlier. And it's the exact same thing. And it toggles over within about a second of once I hit that save button at the very bottom of the screen. So if we want to restrict people from coming off mute, by all means, we can allow or disallow the actual microphone.
I just shut that down for everyone to see the experience. So you'll notice your mic is now turned off. And here I'm going to turn it back on.
I was going to say, now we can challenge people to come off mute if they wanted to while that was on. All right, so for the sake of time, because I know we only got a couple minutes left here, I did want to showcase real fast what it looks like. Hey, the event's over. I need to find out all this information, right? Who actually joined the call? I want to see where my recording information is, whatever the case may be. So let's take an event that I had earlier here today. On my calendar, it says Microsoft Viva Overview. I'm going to double click the actually calendar event, and I can start digging into a few things. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to get a little download option where I can download all my registration, or everyone that registered for the actual event itself. Or more specifically, if I look towards the top, I do see an attendance tab. Giving it a click, it's going to give me a breakdown of who joined, when did they join, did they actually register, or whatever the case may be. What's the average time that everyone was on there as well? I can download all this in an Excel spreadsheet. And then when I do that, I did already have this file downloaded for the sake of time. It'll give me their information, the person's information that actually joined the event, and then also, too, any registration information regarding questions that were given as well. So let's say, for example, in this other event that I had earlier today, I wanted to see what are people's jobs titles? How did they hear about this event? And then what would you like to learn, say, from this particular training session as well? I can download all that information in a nice, easy to read spreadsheet, and then do whatever I need to with it later on. Make charts, make it look pretty, whatever the case is. So great way to get things going. Now, before I go ahead and talk about a couple other items and best practices, once again, just want to take a quick pause and see if we had any other questions that might have come through.
We had a couple that we were able to triage, and I want to recap a few. One was a question about capacity, and I actually wanted to address 3 limitations in webinars. Oh, by the way, my name is Nick Stillings. I'm a peer of Walt's. Sorry. The first is on the registration form and in the flow, there is no way to set a capacity today. That's something that we've got on the roadmap, but we don't have a date for it. So if I wanted to cap a webinar, say 100 people, I'd have to do something artificial, like create a redirected link to the registration page and send that out using a service like Bitly or Owly or TinyURL or something like that. And then redirect it to a page that said registration full. It's a little awkward. So we don't have a way to set a capacity today. The other 2 questions we often get are, is there a way to make this a template I want to have sort of a standard webinar. I saw Walt type in all that stuff. Can I create a new one and kind of pre-fill in the description or things like that? The answer, unfortunately, is no. So right now, today, I just do it one at a time, like we're seeing Walt do, which goes to the last one. Is there a way to make a series? Like I want to have a weekly webinar, or I want to do 100 webinars. The answer to that is no as well, not out of the box. In fact, you'll notice today we didn't set this up with webinar registration just to make it easier for people to come in and join. So I coach my customers, if you've got an existing engine in place, like let's say you're already using Dynamics 365 to automate the webinar registration process, don't pump the brakes on that and start setting these up manually in the team's calendar. We will have a way to scale that at the end of this year. But for now, the way that I set up these webinars is as we saw Walt do it. I think it's a great solution if you don't have an existing mechanism in place to capture that registration and have that more structured experience with the webinar. Sorry, Walt, those are kind of a run-on answer to about 4 questions that popped up in chat.
Not a problem. That was great. Thank you very much for that, Nick. All right, so the last couple minutes, I did want to go over 2 other things. First and foremost, some best practices. So if you're looking to get into driving webinars yourself, if you've never done one, or you're just looking to kind of spruce up your skills a little bit, a couple things to consider. First and foremost, actually turn off your camera before you join the meeting, webinar, or whatever other session that you are doing. And that's simply because you don't want to necessarily interrupt anybody. Maybe their presentation's already begun or somebody else is speaking, and you just want to enter in quietly, so to speak. If you've ever presented, now whether this is slides, showcasing your desktop, exactly what I was doing earlier, going through a whole bunch of different stuff, having a second screen or even a third screen is an absolute lifesaver. You can have all of your notes, you can have side chats up off to the side in case people are letting you know, hey, you're running on too long or whatever the case may be, or maybe you forgot a certain topic to go ahead and discuss. You can see all that on that second display. And then also, too, leveraging team certified headsets. And that's simply going to make you sound significantly better within the actual Teams meeting or webinar experience. It also helps block out a lot of background noise. And Teams does have a lot of that built into it. And this is simply to help heighten that experience even more. While you're presenting, if you're just showcasing, say, slides or information or leading a discussion, PowerPoint Live is absolutely fantastic. And again, this is some stuff that we talked about in the previous sessions that we've held. But it's something to go ahead and consider because you can see all of your notes and information, the slides, and even see the chat within the meeting itself or the webinar itself on one single screen. You don't have to bounce back and forth if you do have a multi-screen setup. This one, better said than done, looking at the camera, and I'm very bad with that myself. I still struggle with it, just to give that more personal connection between you and everyone else that's actually on the call. Then also, too, having an agenda when you go ahead and send out the invitation, the RSVP for the webinar itself. So that way people go into the webinar ahead of time understanding what's going to be discussed. Is this actually for them, or is this something that they shouldn't really pay attention to, or it might be out of scope for them, whatever the case is. And then lastly, dry runs. Dry runs are your friend. They can get a little dry, pun intended, if you do things over and over and over again within the same topic, but they're extremely beneficial when push comes to shove to make sure everyone knows what their cue is or what they should be doing. Now, lastly, and this will be the last thing before I go ahead and let everyone go, so thank you for everyone that did hang around for the next minute or so. I did want to make sure everyone was fully aware of our Microsoft Teams superhero community. This is for all of our clients to go ahead and hop on and join and really start learning from your colleagues within various industries and understanding how do they take advantage of Microsoft Teams, and whether or not it's Teams meetings or other features within the platform. This is a great place to go and speak to others and learn how do they use it. Now, you can join that by going to aka.ms/join superheroes, and we can always drop that link in the chat, and you can request access to hop in there. But apart from that, I did want to say thank you for everyone for joining us here today. We do hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and your week as well. And if you want to see this once again from the recording perspective, we are going to be making it public here and available here very soon. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and take care.